All right, so let's get on and kick off the session today. So the first session is going to be moderated by Alex Ong, who is the Director of Business Development for Magnite, and she will be discussing how CTV is transforming omni-channel campaigns. So let's check that we've got Alexandra and her committee all there. They should just be connecting. This is always the joy of live events as we wait for everyone to connect. Hi, Alex. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And we can already see, this is, again, lovely to have everyone joining us virtually because we can see the different time zone that you're in today.
Yes, you can see my clock as well.
Yes, yeah. Okay, Alex, I'm going to hand straight over to you so you can dive in it with your panel. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you for that. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. As she said, I am Alex Ong. I am the Director of Business Development at Magnite. In this panel discussion, we have expert panelists who will explore the dynamic shift in omni-channel campaigns propelled by CTV advertising. They will delve into where we are as an industry and discuss challenges and provide insights on how CTV can work successfully as part of an omni-channel campaign. I will let them introduce themselves. So let's start with Jacques. Oh, I believe you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm so shy. Sorry for that. So I'm Vice Chairman IAB Europe Brand Advertising Committee and also IAB France representative. And last, I'm a business angels and advisor for startups, including CTV.
Right. Elisa?
Hi there, I'm Elisa. I'm from Germany. I am working with Werf Group and we are running an omni-channel exchange called Smaato, where me and my team are supporting programmatic media buyers to run their campaigns across in-app, web, and CTV. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Donatas. I am a Senior Director of Product Solutions for Advanced TV, working Group M Nexus.
So first question is, what IAB Europe has been looking at the omni-channel opportunity as part of its 2023 plan. To level set, let's explain what we mean when we say omni-channel. What is it and what channels are typically involved? Elisa, let's start with you.
Cool. So I think I have probably the more hardcore understanding of omnichannel because I also come from a purely programmatic, digital, partly performance background. So in my understanding, an omnichannel campaign would actually mean that you can both target and actually measure across various touch points. So those touch points could be TV, could be desktop, could be mobile, could be out of home, although we're not going there today. And of course, would also mean across various creative formats, video display, and so on and so forth. And this is not something that I see happening today, or I don't think anybody sees that happening as of today. In that regard, what we do typically see is that, for instance, CTV then is run somehow alongside a campaign, but without that holistic targeting. So it's more like a, yes, we do that as well. Or there are some cases where you are running a so-called omni-channel campaign, but within the environment of one publisher that is, for instance, having their streaming content available to watch on a TV, and you can watch it in your app and in your browser possibly. And because then you have the logins from each and every user, you can, of course, map the users across the different screens. But in order to actually run a campaign and target an audience across different publishers and different devices, I think we are still lacking really the reliable and scalable cross-device measurement and attribution, or the adoption maybe of what's available. Yeah.
Anything, Donatas or Jacques, you wanted to add to that?
Oh, you wanted to...
Oh, thank you. We kind of spent a lot of time thinking about the concept of omnichannel at Group M over the last, especially around since kind of the formation of Group M Nexus. And we think of it as a kind of spectrum of solutions. So in its simplest form, you can have single channel campaigns from an advertiser perspective. And that's exactly what it says on the tin. Then you can have multi-channel. And in that case, we've got advertisers using multiple channels. So it could be, like, as Elisa was saying, CTV alongside display. But there is no kind of coordination or integration between the two. And that's where there's probably very few single channel advertisers globally. A lot of them will fall in that kind of multi-channel bucket. Stemming on from that, we've got cross-channel, is where we kind of operate increasingly today, where in addition to operating multiple channels, you're also trying to introduce some kind of coordination and integration between them, be it from audience targeting perspective, kind of campaign activation and optimization when campaign is in flight, and then right down to measurement. So having some holistic measurement across the whole of activity. And today we do that across digital programmatic channels that will incorporate CTV alongside digital audio, digital display, other forms of programmatic, digital out of home, and so on. So everything that's available to plug into a single system, like we do that today. And then a step above that, you've got omnichannel, which is that kind of utopian view of the world. So we talk about it as our kind of philosophy or our vision of where we want to move, but we recognize that today there is no omnichannel that's possible, because you have offline channels that would need to be incorporated, or the most significant being linear TV in that. And there are ways where we try to improve and coordinate things, but it's not done in the same way, in the same system, and with the kind of same set of metrics. So we're seeing kind of progress in that space, and moving closer towards omnichannel, but we're still not there yet, but significantly closer to it than we were just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with what you just say, with cross-channel versus omnichannel. If I take omnichannel from the CTV perspective, what complements CTV and deserve to be omnichannel, I did not the devices, but more the audience. Do you target young versus older people? Do you target hobbies versus more general people? Do you target engagement versus just pure branding? Do you have time to build coverage, or do you want an instantaneous coverage? So all these pledge for different channels altogether, not all channels, but maybe 2 by 2. Do you have a small budget? Do you have a bigger budget? And all this, with all this in mind, you will choose what's best complement CTV as omnichannel. So I think it all depends on all these features.
And I guess back to your point, Donatus, what are you seeing at GroupM? Are you seeing more on the cross-channel versus omni-channel, or you're seeing more of a shift going to omni-channel because of how you are approaching this within your business?
So we're seeing that kind of cross-channel / omni-channel as the future, definitely, and we're gearing up our business towards that, and putting kind of bets on that becoming much more mainstream, and kind of the main way that brands and advertisers will engage with media. Because taking that silo approach doesn't really make sense. If you think cross-channel, you can introduce things like budget fluidity. So if you're seeing that one channel is underperforming, you have the levers to divert money into where you're seeing performance. And that can be done by channel, that can be done by audience, that can be done by geography as well. So there are multiple ways of looking at that. So we're definitely seeing the benefits, and we're seeing clients kind of recognize the benefits of it. It is early days, and in that whole process, I think there's a lot that we will learn. And I think a year from today, in the next kind of IB forum, we'll probably have much more to share on that. But we're definitely seeing a lot of kind of positive momentum in this space.
That's great. So when we specifically focus on CTV as part of that omni-channel campaign, Jacques, you already mentioned some of the key reasons, but what other key reasons do you think for integrating CTV into omni-channel campaigns does it complement, and what is the unique benefits it drives that other channels do not?
To using, for instance, CTV as opposed to TV is to just, I would say, increase reach will be the first thing I'm thinking of. Sometimes people say cheaper. I think you have, it's a smaller budget, but it's not cheaper. Let's be honest. When you buy a TV, it's more GRPs than CPM, okay? But the equivalent CPM will be around 5 to 10. With a VOD, It's more 10, 15, and even I think Netflix announced figures much more above this. So it's not cheaper, but it's a smaller budget. So with a smaller budget, you can have an incremental reach. So this is, I think, for me, the first topic. And you can be more context-driven. And also, we had the discussion with Elisa by preparing this discussion is how interactive you can be with Omnichannel. For instance, TV, it was very branding oriented. Then we moved to desktop, there was a bit more interactivity. Then we moved to mobile, even more interactivity. Now you're coming back to TV through CTV. Will people stay on the sofa and just, it will be pure branding, or will people react thanks to your companion screen, thanks to a new red button, whatever? So it will be very interesting to see if Omnichannel can bring interactivity into the helm again. I would be very interested to see that in the future.
Anything you wanted to add, Elisa, from that conversation you had with Jacques?
That's a very particular one, I think, about the creatives, right? And I guess it's a more techie conversation to be had about what you can and cannot do on a vast standard, what levels of interactivity are possible. Right now, not really anything. I think you can put a QR code in your creative, but that's not really what we talk about. The formats we are used to would be VPaid or M-Rate on mobile, for instance, where you have true interactive features that you can make available in a creative. So I think on that regard, that's still something I'm also curious to see what's happening on the creative side and on that support. I think maybe in general to what you said of today about increasing the reach, for instance. So today, Trade Desk kindly in time actually released together with YouGov, their German CTV report. And so they're stating, they did a panel in summer, and they're stating that 75% of the Germans are spending up to 2 hours a day streaming on CTV. That's a lot. So if you want to reach the Germans, you need to buy CTV, because this is already where they are right now. And they apparently are using up to 3 streaming services. And yes, this can be a challenge because not all of them are ad supported right now. But still, I think it does clearly tell you why it's not a question whether if you are adding CTV, it's more how quickly can you add it, I think, to your media mix.
If I may, on the standards, I've been working a lot on VAST, and you're right. Right now, the operators, the box doesn't allow for VPaid. You have new standards coming on with OMID, CMID, RT2, the 2.6 and so forth, which could go for this. And also with the companion screen, you can start to have a kind of interactivity just by pressing OK. And then you don't bother people buying your pizza. You let people watch the game, but with your mobile, you end up with the order. So this was for the... And also, as I saw, if you want to reach a younger target, it's about... I saw that it was about 10 years younger on CTV rather than on TV. So it can make sense to have a CTV. But I discussed with France Télévisions on what's funny is now TV for them sometimes is starting to be the replay, in fact. So you may think, why? Because now they start to play the series first on the digital channel and then on linear TV. So it's a bit fun to see that now linear TV is starting to become the replay. So this will bring new people in CTV, I think.
Yeah, and it's also an interesting point. Oh, sorry, Donatus, you go ahead.
I just wanted to build on that because I think, first of all, it's quite difficult to talk about omnichannel or cross-channel without mentioning CTV. I feel like it's an integral part of it to begin with. And then how it complements other channels included in that mix. There's a really nice study from Thingbox in the UK saying that when you include TV as a medium or as a channel, it enhances the performance not only of the overall campaign, but also individual channels then tend to perform better. And I think it comes back to this kind of storytelling ability to work across more kind of top funnel metrics as well, and then complement the lower funnel metrics. So I think it expands the capabilities of the overall campaign that you're running, overall kind of advertising activity, gives you more options, give you that kind of storytelling or like creative space to expand. And even think about things like sequential storytelling or personalization of the creative and understanding where you are in that kind of journey and so on. So it is quite an exciting kind of addition to that mix.
Yeah, and I think something related to the creative that both Jacques and Elisa have mentioned is, we typically see CTV as very much a branding tool with this when we talk about omnichannel, but actually you can flip it on the other side and actually it can be a driver for DR campaigns as well, especially if you're looking at a specific call to action with a QR code or the red button or other potentially interesting creative formats that we will be seeing out. So I agree with all three of you that it is integral to the omnichannel campaign, and it can fit on opposite sides of that funnel as well, which I don't think we would have said maybe a couple of years ago.
No, and people are a bit homo sapiens, so I don't say we are lazy. Let's say we save energy. When you have a creative, we saw for a long time the TV creative which you just plug into the digital. Now with the new tools, you can have more and more dynamic creative. So it helps to make the omnichannel the reality. Before it was just too painful. Now with new tools, I think people start to realize that dynamic creative can be. I saw the example you had, Donatas, that where you have 1,000 or I don't know how many creatives for a given campaign, and that's quite nice. And this can help omnichannels for sure.
So I think we touched a little bit about it, but Donat, as you already mentioned, we have this utopian view of what true omnichannel is, being able to marry up that offline and online data that we want. But and you talked about where are we now, but I guess to help the viewers today understand what are the available strategies and partnerships when it comes to attribution or methodologies when it comes to omnichannel that they should be considering if they haven't already considered it, and where do you see this trend going as well?
Oh, was that for me? Sorry.
Yes, that was for you.
So comes back to what I was mentioning previously. So we currently what we're offering to our clients is a kind of cross-channel solution that can speak to various objectives that they're trying to achieve. And probably the best way to illustrate, I'll call out a couple of examples that we can share that we're gonna approve for public consumption. So one was a campaign for cancer research, which is available on GroupM website as well. The idea there was that cancer research this past year restarted running their Run for Life event, which is one of their biggest kind of funding events across the year, multiple races happening throughout the country. A national campaign from their perspective just wouldn't have made sense, but they wanted to maximize audience reach and the impact that the campaign delivers. And they had a quite clear schedule of events and locations that they were happening at. So we deployed our kind of cross-channel solution there, leveraging their own data plus some of the kind of data sources that we engage with or have our side to build out a campaign that was targeting those areas, cross-channel. So all the kind of programmatic digitally available channels, including CTV as well, to drive message saturation in the areas where the campaigns were happening. Once the events were done, switching to another location and really helping them drive efficiencies of budget, increase sign-up rates, I think specifically for male audiences, like 6 times compared to their benchmarks previously, and delivering amazing outcomes across the board, both from registration perspective, kind of media savings and efficiency, where they could redeploy the budgets. And I actually forgot the last one, sorry. And then, so that's one example of that. The other one is looking at business impact and driving results for KFC through kind of deployment of geo-based campaigns and knowing their restaurant level sales data, but also app registrations, downloads, and app activity data. We're able to map one against the other and optimize activity on a weekly basis across channels. Again, focusing on the channels and areas that perform the best and really tweaking the campaign weights on that basis. So really focusing on, what matters the most to business, which is bottom line sales delivered to their specific restaurants where they're seeing that data at restaurant level.
And we've got a couple of questions for the audience, but before we get to there, I think, Elisa, we had discussed this before and we were talking about attribution. So I think we should definitely touch upon that as to how that fits into the theme of our discussion.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would just like to insert here as an idea, because it's, oopsala, I'm echoing myself now. Anyways, so the attribution topic that I would like to bring in is something that comes actually more from the performance segment. Sorry, am I just hearing my own echo? This is the weirdest sound all of a sudden. But it's fine for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's just my system boycotting me now. So when talking about attribution, one thing that's has been existing in a while, more from the performance in-app ecosystem, is the classic mobile attribution partners that you work with. So those would be companies such as Schwuchow, Adjust, and there's of course others in the space. And what they have launched already is some solutions for omnichannel campaigns, cross-device attribution that will work for CTV to app and web, for instance. And that approach is interesting because it does typically take into account the IP address, which of course you can use when you have consent from the user to do. And it's different from building a device graph, for instance, which is something that I guess is very challenging to do because it's very expensive and it's also unlikely to be maintained under the privacy regulations in Europe. I think, yeah, Donatas is nodding. We had also that chat, and that's just something with a question mark. Not sure if that's going to be interesting for the European market, maybe for US. But anyway, so within Europe, this is actually an interesting approach because what you're able to do is to show the full funnel of a campaign and then also show which part the CTV business played in the whole user journey towards the potential conversion. And conversion can be a page visit, can be the actual sale, can be whatever you define it here in that regard. And so then the example, I guess, is you're watching TV and there's an ad for booking.com. And so maybe immediately or maybe a few hours later, you are searching then on your phone for booking.com. And typically that would land in your bucket of organic because you don't make that connection normally. And this is then, of course, where such attribution companies can come in and help an advertiser and actually show them that that they can actually attribute that organic search to the previous CTV campaign. And that's something that's, as I said, of course, wildly adopted in the pure in-app ecosystem. And we start seeing more adoption now in the more, let's say, brand part of our industry. Advertisers are more and more using this. Large DSPs and SSPs are having partnerships with some of those companies to implement that data into campaign optimization. And I guess it's not solving the whole chain of all the different challenges we're having, but it can be some interesting piece to look at.
For sure.
Yeah.
So going to some audience questions. One is, with the Trade Desk and German government study about the 2 hours average being spent watching CTV, did it mention the split between ad-supported and non-ad supported platforms?
You mean in the Trade Desk?
Yeah.
And in the 2 hours, no, not that specifically, but there's other studies that show you what are the major streaming providers used in Germany right now. And yeah, there's gonna be Prime and Netflix, and then a third one that is in the rotation, right? I think that's also a little bit what I said in my comment. The time is spent there, but not necessarily all the inventory that's available that users are watching is currently enabled for monetization through advertisement. But there is, of course, there's also more pure AVOD publishers growing in popularity, especially, of course, as people get sensitive to pricing and so on and so forth. And you can't just have, maybe you can have you can afford 3 streaming services or a bundle, but I guess I've read a lot of studies about what's the average, like what is acceptable for people in terms of a monthly budget for streaming services. And so once you've reached that, I think there's a big potential for AVOD.
I think it's about 20 euros,
yeah.
Which is a psychological barrier. So I would say about 2. In US, it's more about 3 to 4, but in Europe, it's about 2. So I think the trend is more for AVOD now, or for an hybrid solutions.
And again, the question, sorry, just to double click on that point here, it's also about, again, the user age and so on and so forth. So not a surprise, but a more younger audience is watching more ad-supported / free streaming services versus an audience that is maybe at a later stage and with a higher income, for instance?
I think we actually did an independent study at Magnite earlier this year, and the shift coming in from the older audience is actually coming into the ad-supported as well. What we did see is that a lot of people do understand that value exchange between free content and advertising. I think it's going back to where we all started with TV, which I think is quite interesting. So I think I agree with you, whether it's ad-supported or not, at some point it will likely be an ad-supported tier to a lot of those streamers that we see that have been historically SVOD.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's gaining momentum with Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime, all adding ad tiers and expanding them into multiple markets.
Definitely. And then another audience question is, what are the key challenges when it comes to planning and targeting for CTV? Maybe in relation to what we're speaking about today.
I think what's interesting is one of the key challenge for me is, would it be omnichannel? Because CTV alone is a bit small. And the problem with omnichannel is you deal with the different currencies. We didn't talk about that, but of course, TV is more based on GRPs and the other one on CPM. It's not always obvious to find the link between those two currencies to make it omnichannel. So for me, the success of CTV will also be how we can cope with the others to bring together a good complementary solution.
Just to, Alex, on your question, to answer that actually, just if you look at the next two panel titles, you'll have your answer there. It's fragmentation, identity measurement. It's been those things for a while now, and everyone's solving them in their own way. So yeah, the challenges remain for sure.
And I think also a challenge will be who will marry with who. Usually, I'm a bit old-fashioned. When we partner or when we marry, we are only two. And here you have broadcasters, you have operators, and you have TV manufacturers. And also it will be interesting to see in the future how this trio evolve. It seems more natural for the broadcaster to go with the IT operators. They already have contracts and so forth. So, for instance, in France, Samsung let TF1 be the sales house of their unsold inventory, which is quite new. But now the thing is, you have the TV manufacturer coming to the game. So how to make these three partners work together to make CTV even more efficient. So that's going to be very interesting in the future.
Yeah, and I think that will fall onto the measurement panel at the end of the day, for sure. And I think with that, we just don't have the same kind of tools like a video amp or an iSpot that they do in the US, but I think that's much more based on regulation.
Just one final thing to mention, just building on that and maybe flipping it a little bit as well. What we've seen from our own kind of CTV, addressable TV delivery perspective is that and it makes sense because it was early days, let's say, but we've been leaving a lot of kind of performance on the table from advertising perspective because we weren't really optimizing the creative delivery. And now we shifted our focus to what I think Jacques mentioned previously, like personalizing, like making the creative addressable as well. And we've already showcased that's adding quite a bit of additional performance and value to clients. So I think that's the focus, both from a CTV perspective, also in the omnichannel world becomes probably even a greater opportunity as well.
I think the frontiers are being blurred as well. For instance, now main channels and linear TV can be seen on Samsung. So it's going to be difficult to say what is a part of CTV, what is a part of linear TV, because they're all good now to share the contents all together. So it's going to be tricky.
I'm going to ask you guys for the last question now. So maybe more of a quick fire. Obviously, you have a magic ball and you guys can see into the future. Where will we be a year from now when it comes to omnichannel and CTV playing a part in that? I'm going to send it to Elisa.
Oh, no. I hope we will be much further, because when I look at other developments in our industry, sometimes we keep repeating ourselves in those panels about where we're going to be in a year. But then I guess I feel it's like a time where things are moving a bit quicker. Right now, for instance, in Germany, CTV budgets are still relatively small. And I definitely think that's going to grow much more in the next year. Statista already projected for this year to be a 25% growth year over year. I think next year that should be even much more with, as I said, more understanding, more if let's say the other two panels that are following us are solving all the problems, I think we're fine. And then budgets can just float into CTV. In the meantime, I think besides those challenges we have with standard targeting attribution, there's also a mindset transition or topic, I think, that's somehow in the air, which has a little bit to do with where you put also CTV, right? Whether you often, for instance, again, I see a separation that there's the TV team and then there's the digital investment team, for instance, and then an advertiser right now would plan their campaign using TV inventory, maybe add a little bit of addressable inventory, and then add a bit of CTV needed. And I think that's changing. That's going to change the order of in which things are maybe done or maybe not necessarily so separated. I think also a few things that can change is really on a practical level. I see in Europe right now that a lot of CTV budgets are transacted through deals or programmatic guaranteed. And for instance, when I look at the US market, the open market percentage is much, much larger than it is here right now. So again, much more into the whole full programmatic audience buying. Again, different market, less regulations, that's clear, I think, right? But I think as a tendency, we are still at the very early stages of trading CTV in a true programmatic way. So I think there's going to be a lot of things happening in that regard.
Yeah, your thoughts, predictions?
Quick. I'm quite optimistic because for different reasons. Maybe because I am optimistic, but it's not the same reason. Because broadcasters, manufacturers, operators, they have to cope. Because if they don't cope together, the pie will grow, but it will not be for them. So it will be for people from the West, for instance. So for big ones. So I think their interest is to cope together. One of the challenge will be a human challenge as well, is because people since work sometime in silos. Donatas talk about that. And for instance, if you have a TV budget and then you have a CTV budget, people say, oh no, it's another thing. It's the same. It's for the same company. So they should cope together. So one of the challenge would be to have somebody working for all, to be omnichannels, not only also for the human people, to have omni campaign, I don't know how to call it. But this is going to be a challenge. And then, as Elisa mentioned, the currencies, the measurements, the attribution, and so forth. But progress are being done. You have now the operators working together, trying to build a unique ideas and so forth. So there are some good steps, I would say.
Oh, and finally, Donatas?
It's interesting on that silo point. I think we'll be further down that line of breaking down the silos. And I think that's definitely an important one. From our perspective, the more kind of success stories for clients that we produce, I think the bigger kind of buy-in we'll see, and that will help accelerate some of that transition. Because when you open it up to the kind of budget fluidity, consistent audience targeting, consistent measurement, and you compare results a year ago when you were not doing that versus now, I think that's quite a strong proof point from a client perspective. So I think from our perspective, more success stories will lead to more buy-in and probably breaking down of those silos. I think that's probably the one that will not necessarily depend on the whole industry coming together and solving issues of measurement and identity. Those will probably be still around in a different form or shape next year still, but I think we'll make tremendous progress nonetheless.
Yeah, I think I had a manager once say it will never be perfect in terms of what we want it to be. It will just be a little bit better, and that little bit better will always go a long way. So thank you very much. Like Elisa, Jacques, and Donatas, it's been a really great discussion with you guys, and back to you, Helen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alec. And yeah,